guys and welcome back. So I do apologise if the lighting is a little bit strange. I'm working with a very orange ceiling light but basically pure white lamp lights. So I hope the colour of this video is okay. If not, I'm going to try and colour correct it, but if not, I do apologise. But this video is not really about the colour, this is about my makeup sponges. So today's video is going to be about the makeup sponges that I have tried and basically my thoughts on them. I have 8 sponges here to talk to you about. There are plenty more I've tried, I'm just not putting all of them into one video because otherwise the video will be way too long. But if you guys would like me to try a specific sponge or you want my thoughts on one, please let me know as well because I would be very glad to try them. My least favourite sponge that I have been using for quite a while because I quite literally just want to use it till it falls apart and then get rid of it is the Real Techniques makeup sponge. I'm putting these in my order of least favourite to my favourite just so you guys are aware. But this is the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge. It's got the RT written on the side. This is very dirty because I did use this morning, but yes, this is what it looks like. It's got the slanted side and the points on the bottom. So the Miracle Complexion Sponge, just the single one, is about approximately $18, available at Priceline, Chemists, Big W, and some chemist warehouses. So the stuff I don't like about this sponge is it's too soft. It's not dense enough, really, for me to be blending my foundation in. If I was going for a slightly lighter coverage, bit more dewier foundation, possibly something that's a bit of a thinner consistency. When I say foundations, I'm thinking of things like the Maybelline Matte and Poreless consistency, the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define, you know, those type of ones where they're creamy, but they're still quite thick and they dry down matte. So this sponge is not quite dense enough. It still blends makeup onto my face, but I find because it's just so squishy and just not dense at all, I really have to spend time blending and blending and blending the makeup into my face. Otherwise, it will just sit on top and look funny. I find this sponge in particular blends things a bit funny over my nose. I may need to actually blend something in with a brush and then go over the top of it with the sponge. Otherwise my makeup may or may not sit on my nose properly. If I do use this with a foundation that's really thin, so say my Australis Fresh and Flawless, it will absorb quite a bit of product. So this one is more typical for what I have found. This one blends in your more typical, just your normal thick foundations, slightly moussey ones as well. So, you know, the Maybelline Matte and Poreless is a great example because it's runny, but it's like a thick liquid. It's just generically creamy. So those are the type of consistencies I find blend best with this. This sponge, out of all the ones I've ever used, is almost impossible to get perfectly clean. I wash this after I use it. 99% of the marks that's on this are stains that will not come off. I have cleaned this with the same brush cleanser that I use on all my sponges, brush and sponge cleaner thing. I use the Maca Maxima one. I've used it on all the other sponges I've had for a long time and it works. It works to clean this, but it never removes the stains. I always feel like there's product build-up on, particularly the foundation side. There's always product build-up on there. Like I can squeeze the sponge again and again and again and more stuff comes out. I've tried soaking it. No matter what I do, this sponge is almost impossible to clean. The next 3 sponges that I am mentioning I don't actually physically have here with me, so I will post a photo in the corner down here. If it's this corner, whatever, I will post a photo down here of the sponges when I talk about them, just so you guys have reference. Also, the links to them will be in the description box down below if you're interested. But my next sponge, which is my second least favourite, is the Beauty Blender Pro. So, you know, the normal beauty blender, this is the Pro. It is the black one, picture will be on the corner, but it is the black sponge. I have tried 3 beauty blenders, that's what I'm talking about now. One I'm mentioning is the Pro. So the Beauty Blender Pro is $30 individually. It's available at Sephora. Maybe available other places, but as far as I'm aware of, if I was going to buy one, I would buy it at Sephora. Stuff I do like about it is it really doesn't absorb too much product. So if you're someone that really likes to get full mileage, so to say, out of your foundations, it's actually a pretty good one. I found, and I've used a few of them. Like I used to buy those packs I just don't anymore, and I'll get into that. But it doesn't absorb too much, really, honestly, no matter what formula I was using. I wouldn't necessarily use them for full like moussey foundations or super runny ones, but like it blended my Estee Lauder Double Wear very well. I also found it had a great density, so I could get everything blended into my face fairly quickly. It also was great for like just a smooth and even application, so like it didn't make things patchy, it didn't, you know, make the texture on my skin exaggerated, didn't make my face look dry. I will admit I haven't used one in quite a while, but from what I remember, it just gave me a nice, even, smooth application. Now, the stuff I don't like, there's a bit of a list. So, the stuff I don't like about the Beauty Blender Pro, sometimes it doesn't absorb product, like, at all. Every sponge needs to absorb a certain amount of product so you can just blend it into your skin. But sometimes I found it didn't absorb anything, so what I had on the sponge, it would just disperse it. It wouldn't absorb anything, so I could press it into the skin. Now, I will admit that was not when it was brand new. That was after I had used it several times. I know it wasn't the cleanser that I used. For some reason, it felt like it just had no holes in the material whatsoever to absorb product. So sometimes after I had been using it a while, it would stop blending the product into my face and it would kind of just smear it around. Then when I put powder on my face, my foundation would look thick and chunky and cakey because it just sat on top of my face and then like the powder like sunk into it. So I would say it wasn't like a long-term use sponge for me. For example, some of these Chi Chi sponges I used for like years at a time. The Beauty Blender Pro, I could not do that with. I find they're just overpriced. That's another thing. Beauty blenders to me are just overpriced. That is why I do not purchase that pack anymore. While they were great sponges and they worked really nicely, personally for me, I see no point in a high-end sponge. I will get to that later on when I talk about other ones, but I see 0 point in a high-end sponge. The Beauty Blender Pro is also not suitable for powder or baking application. I found that the powder just kind of disappeared from the sponge. So I don't always bake, but I like to look for a sponge in case I decide to. But the Pro, I would say no. Okie, the next sponge I'm talking about is the Beauty Blender Nude. So again, photo will be down there. It is the same shape, it is just it's a weird colour. It's like beige, but like kind of khaki, kind of cream. It's not grey, it's a weird colour. But it's called the Beauty Blender Nude. And from what I understand, the Beauty Blender Nude is supposed to be your slightly less coverage, you know, your no makeup type sponge, suitable for a bit more like BB creams and lighter coverage and type of things like that, because it is supposed to give you that really skin-like look to your foundation. The Beauty Blender Nude, the stuff that I don't really like with it, the first one is it can absorb a little bit too much product. So if you have foundation on the back of your hand and you really press the sponge down, it's going to absorb a lot. And because it absorbs quite a bit more, I found obviously your foundation doesn't go as far. You do get lighter coverage, but that one is that can be a pro and a con. So some days I don't want the complete full coverage, and you know, some days I do. So that can be a pro and a con both for it. But I did notice I got slightly lighter coverage as well because it did absorb a little bit more product. It's also not suitable for baking or powder usage at all, that one. Probably out of all three beauty blenders I've tried, that one is the least suitable for baking or powder usage. So the stuff I do like about the Beauty Blender Nude, it was still nice and dense enough. I could get a really nice, like, easy blend out of it. My foundation blended into my face nicely. It didn't smear it around funny like what the Pro did. After a while, the Pro would stop absorbing product and would just spread it around no matter how much I cleaned it. So the Nude, I kind of had the opposite. It just kept absorbing product, but it would blend it in nicely. I might have to use a bit more, but it was nice and dense enough. The shape is still great as well, but like it blended it in quickly, easily, nicely, smoothly, whatever else you would imagine blending a foundation in with. The last beauty blender that I'm going to talk about is the original. So that is the bright hot pink sponge. That is the, you know, that took over the world. I feel like the Beauty Blender Original and the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge are the two sponges that really, like, I know they were available for years and years and years before all this craze came about with sponges, but I feel like those were the two sponges that bought sponges to the YouTube beauty community, because to be completely honest, if I didn't do YouTube or wasn't even interested in watching videos, I probably would be using, you know, those like $2 little C sponges. My mum still uses those. I probably would be using one of those. But the original Beauty Blender, so I have tried several of those because it was also the one that came in the pack with the Pro. I find it's a great overall sponge. Really, between the three beauty blenders that I've tried, there was a drastic difference between all three. But if I was going to recommend one of them, I would say get the original. It was a great just overall sponge. I mean, I could do thicker coverage, heavy coverage. I could do light coverage, thinner formula. I could do concealer. I could do foundation. It blended everything in beautifully because it just has a nice density to it. It absorbed a little bit of product to where you could just blend it on your face, but it wasn't just smearing it around. But it also wasn't absorbing too much. It was easy to clean. It was easy to use. And I have to say, for some reason, I love bright coloured makeup sponges. I don't care what colour it is, but if it is bright coloured, it just speaks to me. I don't know why. I love the hot pink. So yeah, I got an even, smooth, nice application with it. It would be the only one I would say is slightly worth the $30. The only thing really I have to say that I don't like about the original Beauty Blender is that it's not suitable for baking or powder usage. I've seen other YouTubers use it for baking and for powder usage, but personally for the ones I used, the powders that I used, it was not suitable for that. Next sponge I actually have here with me. It is the JUNO & Co. Microfibre Sponge. So this one is the pink one. It also comes in blue, which those two are identical, they're just different colours. There is also a yellow one, but I don't know if it is exactly the same. Do not take this as the yellow one being the same. You will have to do your research. I know Taylor from the Taylor uses the yellow one sometimes, but if you want to look into it, I know the pink and the blue are exactly the same, but do not quote me on the yellow one being the same, I'm not sure. The JUNO & Co. makeup sponge is available for $9 and I buy mine at Mecca Maxima. You can also buy it online, but if I can visit a store, I'll visit a store. So, the things I like about this sponge, this is completely dry by the way, this has such nice density to it. I love the density to it. If all my sponges were this dense, it'd be perfect. I mean, it's really nice. It blends everything in nice and smooth, even. It just blends it into my face so well. This one is perfect for powder and baking. It is also great for liquid foundation and concealer application. So this, I would have to say, is an all-rounder, like complete all-rounder sponge. It does powders, it does baking, it does concealer, foundation, liquid highlighter, it does it all. So with this, I don't quite like the flat bottom. It's designed to sit up like this. This was like insanely bright pink. Not as bright as a Beauty Blender, but this was really bright pink since when I got it. And since I washed it a few times, I don't know if it's the cleanser that I use, because in the instructions of this, it recommended that you use the JUNO & Co. cleanser. But I didn't want to have to buy the JUNO & Co. cleanser just for this sponge. So I'm using my Mecca Maxima one. It hasn't wrecked the sponge in any way. It still feels exactly the same as when I got it, but the colour is fading a hell of a lot out of this. Doesn't bother me because it's more about the actual, how the sponge actually works. But if that bothers you, the colour has faded out of this. If anyone else has used this sponge and the colour has faded out of theirs, please let me know. The only things I have to say that I don't like about this is if you're using a foundation that's really, really liquidy. If you're here in Australia and you use the Australis Fresh and Flawless liquid foundation, that is basically just water. It is so liquidy. I've never seen a foundation that runny. This will probably absorb it all. You will get no coverage with it. whatsoever. But you do get less coverage with this sponge. I don't know if it's because it absorbs a lot or what, because I can't say, oh, it's absorbing everything, I get less coverage. But at the same time, I have noticed I do get lighter coverage with this. So if you're someone that loves the finish and the look of a certain foundation, but you don't like how heavy it is, or you don't like how extreme full coverage it is, or if you only want the one foundation, but you want a sponge that can give you the full coverage and one that can give you less coverage, this is actually perfect for that. Because I will admit, my Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define foundation, I sometimes will use a brush to get maximum coverage. Other times I will use my Real Techniques sponge or another sponge to get full coverage. But there are days where I want that finish, I want the colour of it, I want the foundation, but I don't want that extreme coverage, and I will use this sponge, and it is really lovely. I find it's good for doing liquid foundation and concealer, and I would use it for that, but personally for me, I love using this for powder. I will use this for powder under my eyes, and I will put the powder over my nose. Whatever powder I use under my eyes goes over my nose as well, that way it evens everything out. But yeah, I get such good coverage with my powders under my eyes. It really helps set my concealer down, amp up the coverage of it, and it looks beautiful. I started using this for powder because Taylor, who was the Taylor, she's now changed her YouTube name to Taylor Wynn. She uses the yellow one. Again, I don't know if the yellow one's exactly the same, but she uses the yellow one for powder. And I never thought of that. So I don't use this for liquid foundations and concealers, although you can. I personally use mine for powder. I've used this for powder over my entire face. After that is my Chi Chi sponges. So these are the two shapes that I use. This one is the blue one. It has the rib around the middle, but it's just basically your typical Beauty Blender sponge shape. This one is the bright yellow one, which is basically the same shape as the Real Techniques sponge. So these are the two shapes that I use, but it does come in 4 different shapes. There is a pink one and an orange one. One of them is the hourglass shape with a slant cut in the top, and the other one is just the straight hourglass shape. I can't remember for the life of me which one is which, but there's the other two shapes. These Chi Chi sponges are $5.95 individually, or they're $15 for all 4 in one pack. So if you're buying them over time, I used to buy the 4 packs because it works out cheaper long term. But now that I have so many sponges, I just buy like the individual shapes that I use, because really these do last quite a while. They're available at Target, Chi Chi website. Of course, all these sponges are available on their own company's websites, Maya, and some David Jones's. Basically, the only thing I have to say about these is these are the best affordable sponges. If you are on a really big budget, a really tight budget, do not go for the $2 sponges. I, of course, will test more out, but I have not found a $2 sponge that I like. If you are on a really tight budget, or you refuse to spend an extreme amount on a sponge, go for these Chi Chi ones. I am not joking. These are the best affordable sponges I've ever used in my life. I thought these were the least dense sponges I've ever used, but these are more dense than the Real Techniques one. So if you think these are not dense at all, don't even try the Real Techniques one. So these are soft and squishy, but like not too soft. They absorb enough water to where like your foundation looks nice, but it blends everything into the face beautifully. Everything is smooth and even, and it just, I can't even like describe it. These work better than like some expensive sponges. I would buy these 10 times over the Beauty Blenders. The next sponge, I only have one of them here. They do come in a 2-pack, but the bigger one I had to throw out because I just completely used it. But the next ones are the ECOTOOLS sponges. Again, I have not used this little one because I was testing out the other sponges for this video. So this is the ECOTOOLS sponges. This is the shape that it comes in. This one is the smaller one, but it also does come with a bigger, darker green one. So the bigger one's probably about here, I want to say. They do absorb quite a bit of water. This one has not been wet yet, but the other one it did expand quite a bit when I wet it. So these ECOTOOLS sponges come in a 2-pack. They're available for $20 at Big W, some Big W's, some Priceline chemists, and also, funny enough, Coles supermarkets. The ECOTOOL sponges, they're a little bit more eco-friendly. I've noticed they have changed the packaging. I haven't fully researched it, I will admit, but they just seem to be a bit more eco-friendly. They are made, I think it's from some bamboo fibres or something. They do feel slightly different to other sponges that I have, but like in a good way. I mean, everyone knows ECOTOOLS, they know the brand likes to be a bit more eco-friendly, their stuff's a bit more biodegradable. I mean, I've noticed their packaging has less plastic. You get it. These are really dense, but like in the most perfect way. They blend everything beautifully. It's all smooth on the face, it blends into the face quickly, it smooths everything over. This little one I know will expand quite a bit, so this little one I would even use on my whole face. Might take me a tad longer than my other sponges and the big version, but this one I know I can still use on my whole face. The way that this was designed to be was the big one was supposed to be for your foundation and this one was concealer, but to be completely honest, this one I only use one sponge for both. I don't have separate sponges. That doesn't work on my skin. I would get my foundation lifting up where my concealer would blend down and I would get that line and like all my redness would come through. So I cannot even use two different sponges for two different things on my face. So these I found blended nearly all formulas. Thin, thick, moussey, dry, heavy, full coverage, light coverage. I found really they were a fantastic all-rounder sponge in terms of like liquid formulas and thickness and everything. I didn't really have a problem with any of it. I don't like. They're not good for baking and powder usage. I will admit that. Probably, again, you could get away with baking if you had to, but if you're like me and you have a ton of foundation on your sponge, it's not going to work. From my personal experience, it won't work. So I would find that you'll have to either pick up a different sponge or something for baking if you are someone that needs it, or you can use the bigger sponge for foundation and concealer and this for baking. I don't know, it's up to you how you use them, but didn't really find they were good for baking or powder usage. And I have to say, the only other thing I don't like about these is the shape took a little bit of getting used to. I am used to the sponges, as you can see, that have a point on them in some way, but this one is not up in a point. I don't know if you can see, I will try and hold it. It's flat at the top, it's cut flat, so it doesn't actually come to a point. I will admit, the shape of it did take a little bit for me to get used to, because I am so used to a sponge it comes to like an egg-shaped point. But once I got used to it, it was easy to use. I mean, sometimes I had a bit of an issue with my concealer because of the shape of it. Foundation was totally fine. I do like it has a flat edge. I can get like stuff around my nose, whereas some of the other sponges I can't. But yeah, the shape did take a little bit of me getting used to. If it came to just a complete point right there, I think I would have been fine. But I had to sometimes turn the sponge on an angle, blend my concealer right in my inner corner, and then flatten it out and do it this way. So it did take a bit of me getting used to. But once I worked around that, it was okay. Morphe sponge. I was going to buy one more high-end sponge. I was going to try the Stila one because it was still low enough price point, but it was a high-end brand, but they were sold out. Because I wanted one more high-end brand in here other than just Beauty Blender, but that didn't work out because they were sold out online, so when in store, they were sold out in store as well. So I ended up purchasing the Morphe sponge because it's not like a $5 sponge, but it's also not like a $30 sponge. This is the Morphe Highlighting Contouring Sponge. I don't know if they have any other ones, but it's $11 and I bought mine at Mecca Maxima. So, this sponge, I absolutely love it. I love the shape. Absolutely love it. I will use one side, so for example this side for foundation and either this side for concealer, or I can use the point for concealer. This sponge is fantastic for baking, fantastic for picking up powder. If you're someone that just does your overall face powder with a sponge, it is amazing for that. I will tell you, it is amazing for picking up powder. I'm not one to typically put my normal face powder on with a sponge, but I would use this one for that. This has great density. This is the most dense out of every sponge that I've used, but in such a good way. It is incredible because of the material that it's made with. It just works. I find I get like the best coverage out of my foundations with it. So for example, if I had the Morphe sponge and the JUNO and Co sponge, I would be set, because I could use this one to get complete full coverage out of my foundation. I could then use this one if I wanted slightly lighter coverage and lighter look to my face. Not that this one makes your foundation look heavy and cakey and any of that. For my personal experience, I have not found that. I cannot rave about this sponge enough. I could make like a whole hour video saying why I love this damn sponge. So I have to say, it cleans easily. All of my sponges clean easily except for that Real Techniques one. The rest of them, I have to say, clean very well, very easily, but this is the easiest one to clean. Mine does have a couple of black marks on it there, but that's because it's been sitting in my makeup bowl, and I think my mascara had some on the outside and it got a bit on it. But I mean, really, if I just used this and was going to clean it with my sponge cleaner, this sponge cleans it the best. I mean, I can't even really see what sides I've used for which, and I've used this like 10 to 15 times, and I wash it after each use and I can't see what sides I've used for what. But the things I don't like, it's Morphe. I personally don't get into the whole drama, but I know some people do. I know people have their opinions. Take of it what you wish. I don't want any negative or hate comments on this video. I am not saying I will repurchase this. I am not saying I support Morphe. I am just saying I like this sponge. Okay guys, that was my makeup sponge video. If I missed anything, please let me know. Ask in the comment section down below and I will answer your question. If you have any recommendations for another sponge you guys would like to see featured in my next video, it may take me a few months because I am still going to try and use up a few of these before I buy more. Although, if I'm planning on moving out, buying a few more now probably wouldn't hurt. I'm going to try and buy a few more affordable ones. I have a few affordable ones that I want to try, but please also let me know if there's a particular high-end one that you want me to try. Except for, is it the Fenty one that is that strange shape? No, it's the Laura Mercier one, I think. It's that strange squiggly shape. I'm not trying that one. But if you guys have any other recommendations, please let me know. I would be very glad to do your requests. Yeah, give this video a big thumbs up. Check out the description box down below because these will be linked down there. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!